After the last run, I stopped in Victoria, thinking I'd head straight toward Louisiana. It didn't work out. No suitable loads, no clean options. That's part of this job. Sometimes the road goes quiet. I waited it out, checked the board, talked to dispatch. Nothing lined up. When you're out here long enough, you learn not to force things. If the run isn't there, it isn't there. You wait, you stay ready, and you move when the call finally comes. The call came later than expected. Dispatch said he found a solid run out of Amarillo. Not close, not convenient, but reliable. Louisiana bound. I didn't argue. Booked a flight and crossed Texas by air. It's strange leaving the road like that, even for a few hours. But sometimes that's the only way forward. You step away from the wheel, knowing you'll be back soon enough. Amarillo felt different right away. Dry air, wide sky. The kind of place where things move because they have to. That's where the job finally came together. Milk. Refrigerated freight, heavy and quiet, heading south. No rush, no noise, just responsibility. Paperwork checked out. The truck was waiting. That familiar feeling settled in the moment I climbed back into the cab. After a flight, the engine sounds different. More grounded, more real. I adjusted the seat, checked the mirrors, let everything fall into place. Hooked the trailer, watched the gauges come alive. Cold freight doesn't forgive mistakes. You respect it from the first mile. This isn't a run you rush. You keep it smooth, steady, predictable. That's how you start a long haul the right way. With the trailer locked in and the road opening up ahead, everything else faded out. No distractions, no extra thoughts. Just miles waiting to be covered. Texas stretches time in a way few places do. That's not a bad thing. It gives you space to settle in, to find the rhythm again. Another run, another long road, and plenty of distance ahead to let the day unfold on its own. For this run, I'm driving a Mack Pinnacle with a sleeper. It's not a flashy truck, and it's not trying to be one. The Pinnacle was built for long-haul work, steady power, solid weight, and a frame that feels planted on the road. You notice it most on long stretches. No drama in the steering, no surprises in the throttle. It's the kind of truck that doesn't fight you. It just settles into the miles and stays there. Mack introduced the Pinnacle as a highway-focused tractor, designed for regional and long-distance freight. This platform has been around since the mid-2000s, evolving slowly, not radically. That's part of its character. It's built to last, not to impress. Heavy-duty components, a straightforward layout, and a cab that prioritizes function over luxury. For runs like this one, that balance matters more than anything else. The sleeper on this truck changes the way you approach a long haul. You're not just passing through the road, you're living on it. Space is limited, but everything has its place. It's enough to rest, reset, and be ready for the next leg. That matters on refrigerated runs where timing and consistency come first. When the truck feels like a stable base, the road feels easier to manage. Under the hood, the Pinnacle is built to pull, not sprint. It's about torque and reliability, not speed. That shows when the trailer is heavy and the road stretches on without interruption. The truck holds speed well and stays composed under load. It doesn't ask to be pushed. It rewards smooth driving instead. That's exactly what you want when you're responsible for cold freight over long distances. What I respect most about this Mack is its consistency. Hour after hour, mile after mile, it feels the same. No sharp edges, no sudden changes in behavior. That kind of predictability builds trust. On a long run like this, trust matters. You focus less on the machine and more on the road ahead. And when a truck lets you do that, it's doing its job right. Refrigerated freight isn't loud, but it demands attention. Milk doesn't forgive mistakes. Temperature, timing, consistency, everything matters from the first mile. You don't feel the pressure right away, but it's always there. Every stop, every slowdown, every decision affects what's behind you. With a reefer, responsibility isn't about speed. It's about keeping conditions stable, mile after mile, without cutting corners. The hardest part of cold freight is that nothing looks wrong until it is. The trailer stays quiet, the road stays the same. That's why discipline matters. You watch the gauges even when everything feels fine. You don't assume, you verify. On runs like this, attention is the job. If you relax too much, the load pays the price later. Refrigerated loads teach patience. You don't rush starts, you don't slam stops, you don't chase time. Smooth driving protects the freight better than any shortcut ever could. That changes how you move on the road. You think ahead, you plan further out. Responsibility shifts from getting there fast to getting there right. There's no room for ego with cold freight. You respect schedules, rest breaks, and the limits of the truck. You accept that some delays are better than damaged cargo. That mindset stays with you. It slows you down in the right way. The road stops being a race and becomes a process. Steady, controlled, repeatable. By the end of a long reefer run, the reward isn't excitement. It's knowing the load stayed clean, cold, and consistent the entire way. No alarms, no surprises, just quiet work done properly. That's what responsibility looks like out here. Not headlines, not drama, just miles covered with care, and a trailer that arrives exactly how it left. It's night as I roll out of Amarillo. The city lights stay behind, but the place itself doesn't. This is where I was born. And even when you leave it physically, it stays with you. Amarillo didn't start as a city the way most people imagine. Back in 1887, it was just a railroad stop. No vision, no romance. Tracks laid across open land, tents set up nearby, and people waiting for movement to turn into opportunity. They called it Ragtown back then, temporary. That name said everything. Railroad camps weren't meant to last, but this one did. The Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad stopped here, and that stop mattered. Once rails meet open land, something always grows. People followed the tracks. Supplies followed the people. A town formed without asking permission. The name Amarillo came from the land itself. Yellow soil, yellow grass, yellow blooms after rain. No ceremony, no branding, just observation. That kind of honesty stuck. Even now, the name feels practical. It doesn't try to sound bigger than it is. It sounds like a place that knows exactly where it came from. The first version of the town didn't survive long. Flooding forced people to move everything to higher ground in the late 1880s. Buildings were relocated. Businesses moved block by block. Instead of fighting the land, they adjusted to it. That decision shaped the Amarillo I grew up in. Adaptation wasn't a theory here. It was a habit. By 1890, Amarillo had already become a major cattle shipping point. Livestock moved through here by the thousands. Railcars loaded day and night. Timing mattered. Missed schedules cost money. Coordination meant survival. That early focus on logistics stayed embedded in the city. It learned early that movement isn't chaos, it's structure. In 1899, Amarillo officially became a city. February 18th, a mayor, a council, Paperwork finally caught up with reality. But by then, the place already knew what it was. Government didn't create Amarillo, work did. The city simply formalized what was already functioning. The early 1900s brought growth. Schools, newspapers, permanent buildings. By 1910, nearly 10,000 people lived there. At that point, Amarillo stopped being a stopover and started being a home. That shift matters. Once people decide to stay, they build differently, with intention. Energy reshaped everything. Natural gas discoveries around 1918 changed the scale of the city. Oil followed in the early 1920s. Suddenly, Amarillo wasn't limited to cattle and rail. Industry arrived with long-term weight. That kind of economy favors consistency over speed. It fit the city's mindset perfectly. Education followed. West Texas A&M nearby. Amarillo College opening in 1929. That anchored the city beyond markets and resources. Knowledge lasts longer than commodities. That decision gave Amarillo depth. It wasn't just about what moved through the city, but what stayed. The 1930s brought Route 66. Automobiles replaced trains as the dominant flow. Travelers passed through in every direction. Even during the Great Depression, movement never stopped. It only changed shape. Motels, service stations, roadside businesses followed. Some of that era is still visible if you know where to look. After World War II, highways took over completely. The city expanded outward. Freight became the main pulse. Roads replaced rails as the primary arteries. That transition didn't break Amarillo, it strengthened it. The city had already learned how to adapt without losing its core purpose. From 1942 to 1968, an Air Force base operated near the city. Military presence added structure, demand, and population. When the base closed, Amarillo adjusted again. Not every city survives that kind of change. This one did. It always seemed prepared to recenter itself when necessary. By the 1990s, Amarillo had passed 150,000 residents. Growth stayed controlled, measured. The city never chased scale for its own sake. It expanded to match the work available. That balance kept it stable when other places struggled. Infrastructure defines Amarillo more than any skyline. Interstate 40 east to west, Interstate 27 north to south. Those routes reflect the city's original purpose: movement in every direction, connection without spectacle, function over display. Agriculture, energy, freight, services. Those pillars carried the city forward, not trends, not hype, just work that demands reliability. That kind of economy shapes people quietly. It rewards patience. It punishes shortcuts. That environment leaves a mark. Growing up there, you learn early that results matter more than noise. That showing up consistently beats showing off. Amarillo doesn't celebrate drama. It respects completion. That lesson stays with you long after you leave. The city never tried to reinvent itself. It adjusted layer by layer, rail to road, cattle to energy, local to national. Each shift added something without erasing what came before. That kind of continuity is rare. Amarillo doesn't demand attention. It doesn't ask to be admired. It exists to support movement, to handle volume, to stay useful. That's a quiet strength. One you don't notice until you've been somewhere that lacks it. Looking back on its history, there's no single dramatic moment. No miracle rise. No collapse. Just steady decisions made over time. Adjustments instead of resistance. That's how the city lasted. That's how it shaped the people who came from it. Amarillo is part of me whether I'm there or not. Not because it was loud or beautiful, but because it worked. It taught me how to move forward without rushing, how to adapt without breaking rhythm. That kind of place doesn't follow you physically. It stays in how you think long after you've moved on. A lot of people think night driving is a personal choice. Most of the time, it isn't. According to FMCSA data, a significant share of long-haul freight in the U.S. moves during nighttime hours. The reason is simple. Less traffic means fewer delays. For freight that depends on timing, night miles are often the most reliable miles. That's why at 2 or 3 in the morning, the road is still full of trucks. Studies by the Federal Highway Administration show that heavy truck traffic drops sharply after midnight, but it never disappears. Passenger cars leave the road. Freight stays. For long-haul drivers, night hours are often built into the schedule from the start. It's not about preference. It's about keeping freight moving while the rest of the system slows down. FMCSA safety reports show that many carriers plan overnight driving to avoid urban congestion. Congestion costs fuel, time, and consistency. At night, speeds are steadier and lane changes are fewer. That predictability matters, especially for long runs where every unexpected slowdown adds stress to the schedule. Night driving isn't faster, it's smoother. Fuel efficiency plays a role too. Department of Transportation studies have shown that trucks often achieve better fuel economy during off-peak hours. Less braking, fewer accelerations. Long, steady stretches at cruising speed. For large fleets, those small savings add up across thousands of miles. That's another reason so many long-haul routes stay active through the night. Refrigerated freight moves especially often at night. Industry logistics reports point out that cooler ambient temperatures reduce strain on refrigeration units. The reefer doesn't have to work as hard to maintain target temperature. That lowers risk and reduces fuel consumption. For loads like dairy, produce, or frozen goods, night miles make practical sense. It's not tradition. It's math. Accident data adds another layer. FMCS, statistics show that while fatigue is a risk factor at night, overall crash involvement with heavy trucks is often tied more to traffic density than darkness alone. Fewer cars mean fewer unpredictable moves. Night driving reduces exposure to aggressive daytime traffic. That doesn't remove risk, but it changes its shape. Hours of service rules shape the night schedule as well. Federal HOS regulations limit driving time, but allow flexibility in when those hours are used. Many drivers align their clock to overnight runs to maximize uninterrupted driving time. Fewer stops, fewer forced pauses. The night offers longer, cleaner driving windows when managed correctly. Logistics networks are built around these patterns. Distribution centers often schedule outbound freight late at night or early morning. That timing keeps docks flowing and avoids daytime congestion. When you see a line of trucks rolling at 3 a.m., you're looking at a coordinated system, not random movement. Night freight is planned freight. For long-haul operations, consistency matters more than comfort. Industry data shows that on-time delivery rates improve when routes avoid peak traffic hours. Night driving supports that. It reduces variables, less merging, less stop and go, fewer interruptions. The road becomes simpler, and simple systems fail less often. That's why the highway is still alive at this hour. While most of the country sleeps, freight keeps its schedule. Not out of habit, but necessity. Night miles aren't about preference or personality. They're part of how the system works. Quiet roads, steady speed, controlled movement. At 2:50 in the morning, this isn't unusual. It's normal. 4:49 a.m. Dallas is nothing but a sea of orange streetlights and cold concrete in my mirrors. I'm just passing through, keeping a steady pace while the city is still shaking off its dreams. Most people are just starting to reach for their alarm clocks, but I've already got the Mack humming. I'm hauling 46,000 pounds of milk, heading southeast toward the Gulf. No stops in the city today, just the open road and the mission ahead. There's a specific kind of peace at this hour. The night owls are heading home and the early birds haven't quite cluttered up the lanes yet. It's the perfect time to move a heavy load. Liquid cargo like this is a living thing. You feel the surge behind you with every gear change. It requires a smooth hand and a focused mind. Back in my police days, this hour usually meant a high adrenaline call. Now it just means I've got a head start on the Texas heat. Watching the Dallas skyline fade feels like leaving a heavy wake behind. I spent years patrolling streets like these, dealing with the chaos that most people try to ignore. From the high cab of this Mack, the city looks different, quieter, less threatening. I'm aiming for Port Fourchon, Louisiana. It's a 500-mile run, and every mile I put between me and the city lights feels like a step towards something cleaner. No sirens, no radio chatter, just the road. My father always said the hour before dawn is the most honest time of day. Back in Amarillo, he'd be in the garage by now, the smell of old grease and fresh coffee filling the air. He didn't talk much, but he understood the soul of a machine. He knew that if you take care of the engine will take care of you. I can feel him with me this morning. The vibration of the steering wheel and the rhythmic growl of the turbo, it's a language we both understand. Navigating these Dallas interchanges requires a sharp eye, even when they're empty. A milk tanker doesn't forgive mistakes, and physics is the only law that never takes a day off. I've seen enough accident scenes to know how fast things can go south when you lose respect for the weight you're carrying. You stay smooth with the clutch, gentle with the brakes, and you keep your eyes moving. It's a simple discipline, but it's what keeps you alive on a long haul. Checking my gauges as the city lights thin out. Oil pressure is steady, air is holding. This Mack is a borrowed rig, but she's got plenty of heart. Some trucks feel like they're fighting you, but this one is eager to run. We're both outsiders in a world that's moving too fast, looking for a bit of freedom on the edge of the map. As we hit the stretch toward East Texas, the speed limit goes up and the distractions go down. Now the real drive begins. The transition from city to country is subtle at this hour. The streetlights get farther apart until they're replaced by the glowing signs of lonely truck stops. It's a sensory reset. As a cop, your senses are always looking for a threat, a reason to intervene. Here, I'm dialing into the machine. I'm listening for a change in the tire whine or a tick in the engine. It's a different kind of vigilance, but it's the only thing that matters when you're 500 miles from home. I find myself thinking about the bullet that ended my career in the department. It's a cold knot of scar tissue in my shoulder now, a permanent souvenir of a night in Amarillo that didn't go as planned. When the humidity rises, it aches. On a crisp morning like this, it just tingles. It's a reminder that life can change in a heartbeat. One minute you're a protector of the peace, the next you're just a guy in a cab, looking for a new path through the dark. Most people see a tanker and see a big metal pill. I see 46,000 pounds of momentum that wants to go its own way. Hauling liquid is a lesson in patience. You have to ride the wave instead of fighting it. You learn to anticipate the curves and the hills long before you hit them. In my old life, I tried to control every variable. Out here, you learn that you're just a partner to the road. You do your part, and the road handles the rest. The adrenaline from navigating Dallas is starting to wear off, and the silence of the open road is inviting a heavy kind of fatigue. My eyes are starting to feel like they've been rubbed with sandpaper, and the dash lights are looking a bit too blurry. I've seen enough night shift tragedies to know that caffeine only takes you so far. When the road starts to hypnotic, it's time to listen to your body before the ditch makes the decision for you. I need to find a spot to shut down for a few hours. Somewhere quiet, away from the main flow of traffic if possible. Driving a tanker while you're exhausted is like handling a loaded weapon with a hair trigger. One microsleep, one slow reaction to a swerve, and 46,000 pounds of milk becomes a wrecking ball. In the Army, we pushed through the limits, but out here, there's no mission worth a life. I'm scanning the signs for the next decent rest area or a quiet dirt lot. There's a small truck stop coming up in a few miles. It's not much, but it'll have a patch of gravel where I can park this Mack and close my eyes. My shoulder is throbbing. The old injury always flares up when I'm tired. It's a physical signal that the shift is over. I'll set the brakes, draw the curtains, and let the world spin without me for a while. The Gulf will still be there when I wake up. A rested driver is a living driver, and I plan on seeing that sunrise properly. Stepping out of the cab at 8 p.m. was like walking into a different dimension. The sun I saw at that rest area is long gone, replaced by a thick, humid Texas night. 470 miles to go. As I pull the Mack back onto the main line, the high beams start carving out a path through the pines. There's something about this stretch of East Texas that feels heavy. It's not just the humidity, it's the history. We're moving into a territory where the shadows have teeth. When I say this road is haunted, I'm not talking about ghosts. I'm talking about the 4 bodies found in a patch of land right off the highway in League City. They called it the Calder Road cases. 4 young women found between 1983 and 1991, all within a few hundred feet of each other. For decades, they were just Jane Does. It took 30 years of DNA advancement to finally give them their names back. Imagine that 30 years of drivers passing by that field, never knowing what lay just past the tree line. The first was Hyde Villarreal Phi, then Laura Miller. Laura's father, Tim Miller, ended up founding Texas EcoSearch because the police response back then was, let's just say, lacking. As a former cop, it burns me to know that these cases went cold because people assumed these girls were just runaways. In this part of Texas, if you went missing in the 80s, the swamp usually got the blame before the human monsters did. Then there's William Lewis Reese, a real-life monster who's currently sitting on death row. In 1997, he went on a spree right along this corridor. He kidnapped and killed young girls like Tiffany Johnston and Jessica Kane. He was a long-haul driver himself for a while, using the job as a cover to scout the roads. That's the part that sticks in my throat. He sat in a cab just like this one, looking at the same horizon, while planning things that would make a devil blush. Reese didn't confess to most of it until 2016, when he was already in prison for another crime. He finally led investigators to the remains of Jessica Kane and Kelly Cox. He'd buried them in horse pastures and fields, miles apart. It shows you how calculated these guys are. They don't just kill. They manage the landscape. They use the vastness of Texas as an accomplice. You can drive for hours out here and not see a single soul. And guys like Reese knew exactly how to use that silence. But Reese wasn't the only one. Investigators believe there were at least 3 or 4 different serial killers using the killing fields at the same time. Think about that. While you're worrying about your tire pressure or your fuel levels, there was a time when multiple predators were crossing paths on this very highway, looking for the same thing, an easy target and a quiet place to disappear. It's enough to make you keep the interior lights on in the cab. I remember the case of the Fort Worth 3 girls who vanished from a shopping mall in 1974. Their car was found with the Christmas presents still inside, but the girls were gone. Never found, not a trace. Most people think they ended up somewhere south, buried in the same damp earth I'm rolling over right now. When you've seen the cold case files, you start to realize that the highway is just a giant conveyor belt of secrets. The FBI eventually set up a special task force just for I-45. They realized that the anonymity of the road was the perfect weapon. In a patrol car, you're looking for a reason to stop someone. But out here, in the dark, everyone looks the same. A white van, a silver sedan, a beat-up truck, They all just blend into the heat haze. You could pass a killer 10 times a day and never know it unless he makes a mistake. And these guys? They didn't make many mistakes. As I pushed past the 617, the road starts to feel different. The pine trees of East Texas are tightening their grip on the highway, and the air coming through the vents is getting heavy with that swampy, humid weight. 370 miles left. We're coming up on the Sabine River, soon the gateway to Louisiana. In the world of true crime, crossing that river is like stepping into a different century. The rules change, the landscape changes, and the secrets. Well, the secrets get a lot harder to dig up. Just across the border, there's a small town called Jennings. Between 2005 and 2009, it became the center of a nightmare known as the Jeff Davis 8. 8 women, all found dead in the canals and back roads surrounding the town. What makes this real-life case so chilling isn't just the number of victims. It's the wall of silence that met the investigators. In a small town, everyone knows everyone, and sometimes that's exactly why the truth never comes out. As a former detective, I've seen my share of blue walls and closed ranks, but the Jennings case was something else. There were allegations of witness tampering, missing evidence, and even rumors of local law enforcement being involved in the very crimes they were supposed to solve. It's a messy, tangled web that leaves you with more questions than answers. When the people you're supposed to call for help are the ones being investigated, where do you turn? Driving this rig through the dark, I can't help but think about those girls. They were mostly people living on the edges of society, people the world tends to overlook. But out here, in the dead of night, their stories feel louder than the Max Turbo. These canals I'm about to cross, they aren't just for irrigation. They're the arteries of the swamp, and sometimes they're the only witnesses to things that happen under the cover of a Louisiana moon. Checking my mirrors again. The headlights behind me are few and far between. It's 360 miles to the port, and the transition from the dry Texas asphalt to the elevated bridges of the Bayou state is almost here. The road becomes a bridge for miles, and there's nowhere to pull over if something goes wrong. It's just you, the water, and the ghosts. Keep that wheel steady. We're heading into the heart of the mystery now. "10:44 p.m. I'm making good time on the I-49, clocking 54 miles per hour, just past the sign for Mansfield and Natchitoches. 327 miles left until Port Fourchon. The road is getting lonelier, and the wall of trees on either side of the highway is closing in. We're deep in the heart of Louisiana now, a place where the line between the living and the dead has always been a little blurry. Out here, the darkness doesn't just hide things, it swallows them whole. Speaking of Natchitoches, it's the oldest settlement in the Louisiana Purchase, and it's seen its share of blood. But the case that always sticks in my craw when I'm on this stretch is the disappearance of the Jennings 8 girls. Even though Jennings is further south, the ripples of that investigation felt all the way up here. It was a case of systemic failure. When 8 women from the same small community end up dead in canals and no one is convicted, that's not just bad luck. That's a conspiracy of silence. As a former detective, I look at these exit ramps and see more than just asphalt. I see the disposal sites of the real world. In 2005, the first body of the Jeff Davis 8 was found in a canal off the highway. Over the next 4 years, 7 more followed. The victims all knew each other. They all hung out in the same circles. There was a common thread, but the local law enforcement seemed to be weaving a different story. They focused on the victims' lifestyles instead of the predator in their midst. There's a persistent theory that a serial killer wasn't responsible for the Jennings murders, but rather a group of people who thought they were above the law. Rumors of dirty cops, high-ranking officials, and a dark underbelly of the Bayou that protected its own. It's the kind of story that makes you check your locks twice at a rest stop. In the big city, you fear the stranger. In the deep south, sometimes the stranger is the only one you can actually trust. 11:52 p.m. I'm staring at the 300-mile mark on the GPS like it's a milestone. Just past a sign, 29 miles to Natchitoches, 66 to Alexandria. I've tucked in behind another rig, letting his taillights guide me through this thick Louisiana night. We're doing 44 miles per hour, just steady enough to feel the weight of the air pressing against the glass. You can feel the bayous breathing out here, the swamps that give this state its character and its ghosts. "12:23 a.m. Just cleared Natchitoches. 272 miles left to the port, and the Mack is finally stretching its legs at 61 miles per hour. This is the oldest permanent settlement in Louisiana Purchase, and you can feel that age in the air. It's a town built on cotton, trade, and more secrets than the Red River could ever wash away. At this hour, the historic district is just a collection of shadows and wrought iron, but out here on the I-49, it's just another milestone on a long, dark road. Natchitoches has that eerie, southern Gothic beauty, but it also sits right on the edge of the Cajun corridor, where things have a habit of staying hidden. In the world of real crime, these old river towns are famous for cold cases. It's easy to get lost in the past when you're driving through the middle of it at midnight. You start to think about the people who vanished from these small town squares decades ago, leaving nothing behind but a faded missing poster and a family that never stopped looking. The road ahead is straight and lonely now, 252 miles to go. My high beams are catching the glint of the guardrails and the occasional reflective eyes of the local wildlife watching from the tree line. It's a hypnotic rhythm, the hum of the tires, the glow of the dash, and the steady countdown of the miles. We're pushing deeper south, moving toward Alexandria, where the swamps really start to take over the landscape. Stay with me. The night is just getting interesting. 12:57 a.m. Just rolled into Alexandria. The city is quiet, mostly just the hum of the streetlights and the occasional glow of a 24-hour diner. It's a major crossroads in Louisiana, and as any cop will tell you, where roads meet, stories collide. Some people are just passing through to get home, while others are looking for a place where they won't be recognized. At this hour, everyone is a shadow until they step into the light. Alexandria has a vibe that's hard to shake after midnight. You start thinking about the Red River Valley and the cases that have gone cold in these parishes over the years. It's the kind of place where the humidity feels like it's holding a secret back. Back in the day, we'd watch the out-of-state plates closely around here. You never knew if the driver was a tourist or someone like Ronald Dominique, the Bayou serial killer, moving quietly between the small towns of South Louisiana. Ronald Dominique, the Bayou serial killer. Most people outside of Louisiana haven't even heard his name, but they should. Between 1997 and 2006, he took the lives of at least 23 men. He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was a man who lived in a homeless shelter and hauled around a tricycle. He was invisible. And in the world of police work, an invisible man is the hardest one to catch because nobody bothers to look at him twice. His hunting grounds were the truck stops, the dark street corners, and the edges of the cane fields. He targeted the vulnerable men who were struggling with addiction or homelessness, people he knew wouldn't be reported missing right away. As a former cop, that's the part that keeps me up. Dominique understood the cracks in our system better than the people who built it. He knew that if he picked the right victims, the clock wouldn't start ticking on his crimes for weeks or even months. He would lure them in with the promise of a place to stay or a bit of money, then take them to his home where he'd overpower them. Afterward, he'd dump the bodies in the remote bayous and ditches surrounding the small town south of here. For 9 years, the body count rose, but because the victims were scattered across different parishes, the dots weren't being connected. It's a chilling reminder of how easy it is to hide a monster in plain sight when everyone is looking the other way. The break in the case didn't come from some high-tech lab. It came from a survivor, a man who managed to escape Dominique's house and had the courage to go to the authorities. When the task force finally moved in, Dominique confessed to everything. He sat there in a small interrogation room and laid out a decade of horror with a calm that would make your blood run cold. He didn't look like a reaper. He looked like just another face in the crowd at a local gas station. Dominique is serving 8 consecutive life sentences now, but the scars he left on these parishes are permanent. His story is a dark shadow that hangs over every quiet back road and every isolated cane field in South Louisiana. When I'm driving this Mack through the mist, I think about how many people passed him on the road, nodded to him at a diner, or ignored him on a street corner. It's a lesson that never leaves you. The most dangerous thing on the highway isn't the terrain, it's the person you never suspect. 2:22 a.m. The world outside is nothing but black water and moss-draped cypress trees. We're 175 miles out, and the air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. This is the hour when the road starts to play tricks on you. In Louisiana, you don't just worry about the monsters you can see, like Ronald Dominique. You worry about the ones the old-timers talk about, the spirits that supposedly never left these highways. Every trucker down here knows the story of the phantom hitchhiker of Highway 1. They say you'll see her standing near the edge of the swamp, a young woman in a tattered white dress, looking lost and soaked to the bone. You pull over, thinking you're being a good Samaritan, and she gets in the cab. She doesn't say much, just points further down the road. But when you look over a few miles later to ask for directions, the seat is empty, and the only thing left is a damp patch on the upholstery. Some say it's a girl who died in a wreck back in the 60s. Others think it's something older, something that belongs to the Bayou itself. As a former cop, I don't put much stock in ghosts, but I've seen things on the night shift that I can't explain. I've seen lights dancing in the marsh where there are no roads, and I felt a sudden, icy chill in a closed cabin that was 90 degrees 10 seconds before. Out here, the logic of the city doesn't always apply. Then there's the Rougarou, the Cajun werewolf. In the deep parishes, they tell the kids to be good or the Rougarou will get them. But talk to the guys who've lived in the swamp their whole lives, and they'll tell you it's more than a bedtime story. They'll tell you about finding livestock torn apart in ways no coyote could manage, or seeing a pair of glowing eyes 7 feet off the ground, watching the highway from the tree line. It sounds crazy until you're the only truck for 50 miles and your engine starts to sputter. Maybe it's just the isolation. When you spend enough time alone in the dark, your mind looks for shapes in the shadows. But there's a specific kind of energy in Louisiana, a mix of voodoo history, ancient swamps, and a lot of unsettled spirits. You pass an old, crumbling cemetery right on the edge of the road, and you find yourself gripping the wheel a little tighter. You aren't just driving through a state. You're driving through a graveyard that's still breathing. "108 miles to go. I'm keeping the Mack steady, eyes moving between the mirrors and the black abyss ahead. Whether it's a ghost, a legend, or just a tired mind, the feeling is the same. We're guests in this territory. The swamp allows us to pass, but it doesn't owe us anything. I'll be glad to see the industrial lights of the port and the sunrise over the Gulf. Until then, it's just me, the milk, and whatever else is sharing the road tonight." 5:34 a.m. There's a specific magic to a Louisiana dawn that you won't find anywhere else in the States. The sky is starting to bleed into a soft violet, reflecting off the standing water in the ditches. At 22 miles per hour, the Mack feels like it's just gliding through a painting. After a night filled with ghosts and grim history, seeing the first hint of light touch the Spanish moss on those old oaks, it's like the world is finally taking a long, clean breath. We're in the heart of the wetlands now, where the line between the road and the water is as thin as a whisper. You see the white herons starting to wake up, standing like statues in the salt marshes. This state has a rugged, untamed beauty that's hard to put into words. It's a landscape that's constantly shifting, shaped by the tides and the wind. From the cab of this truck, watching the mist rise off the bayou while the rest of the world is still asleep, you realize why people fight so hard to protect this fragile piece of the coast. Only 30 miles to go. The industrial silhouette of the port will be visible on the horizon soon, but for now, it's just me and the slow transition from night to day. The air outside is thick with the scent of salt and blooming wild lily. It's a sensory overload that reminds you that for every dark secret hidden in the swamp, there's 1,000 acres of breathtaking life. We're almost there, at the edge of the map, and honestly, there isn't a better view in the world to finish a long haul. 7:23 a.m., we finally made it to the edge of the world, Port Fourchon. The massive oil storage tanks and the industrial hum of the harbor tell me the job is done. This haul from Dallas wasn't just about moving 46,000 pounds of milk. It was a journey through the shadows of the South. Looking at the final slip, this run put $35,738 in my pocket. Not a bad day's work for a man and his Mack, though some of the stories we picked up along the way are worth a lot more than the paycheck. It's time for me to find a quiet motel, get some shut-eye, and let the ghosts of I-45 and the Bayou serial killers fade away for a while. I'll spend the next 24 hours here, listening to the Gulf waves and waiting to see what the dispatch board has for me next. Wherever the next load takes us, you can bet there's a story waiting at the other end of the highway. The road never truly ends. It just changes direction. Thanks for riding shotgun with me through the night. If you enjoyed this mix of heavy hauling and true crime, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on the cases we covered or any legends from your neck of the woods. Your support keeps this rig moving. Stay safe, keep your eyes on the mirrors, and I'll see you on the next run. This is Colt Alvarez, signing off from the coast.